Good morning and welcome back to Moral Conservative Podcast. Today I want to share with you something that I like to call, when I do it about once or twice or three times a month, prophetic journalism. Prophetic journalism for January 25th. A part of what I try to do here on this podcast is take the Word of God and apply it to what's going on in the world today and let us get an idea where we're at in the scheme of prophetic events. So there's definitely a pro-Christian, pro-conservative lean toward everything I do. But I want to share some news headlines, basically. I won't go into a lot of detail on any, but I've got several. I'm going to start out with the World Economic Forum, which just left the liberal haven of Davos, Switzerland, and has decided to grace us with the wonderful new one world globalism anecdotal evidence of their stupidity. It just proves one thing about these guys. You know, most of these guys are old hippies now. They were hippies back in the 60s and 70s, and, you know, they've gotten to the place where they still are clinging to, as Obama once said about conservatives, we cling to our guns and our religion, and we do. Well, they still cling to the psychedelic drugs, apparently, because what they are proposing tells me that they must still be into some form of opiate or LSD. These guys are absolutely nuts. The World Economic Forum came out, and this is the big tagline for me from what's come out of the Economic Forum at this time. Elections may be a thing of the past in the future. Did you know that? I mean, hey, we don't need elections when we've got artificial intelligence, when we've got a one world ruling body that's going to select who's going to run, just like they pretty much have for the past several years, especially until 2016 when Trump really upset the apple cart. But they say that AI has a, quote, prescriptive mode that can be used to predetermine election results. Let that sink in. 2020 was a test run for all of this. 2020 was a test run to see if we would accept a stolen election. And we have. We have. Republicans dutifully went along, even though Rand Paul and Ted Cruz and others said emphatically, we will not certify the election unless we find out a little more about it and dig deeper into it. They were supposed to stand up. They were going to say things, and they didn't do it. None of them did. The J6 thing, which was a fake, 2020 was the biggest year, and 2021 early on was the biggest year of fakeism there ever was. There was the fake pandemic that got everybody to stay home, to stay out of churches, to cede their freedom and liberty to a government entity, whatever it is. And it caused us then to change our voting methods from mostly going to the polls to writing in who we wanted. And because of that, and because of the mail-in ballots, there was so much fraud. It combined that with what they did with the computers, with the Dominion voting systems. I mean, we saw right before our eyes. I was in bed, but my wife was still up. Miss Donna was still up. I went to bed. I said, well, Trump's got this one. I'm going to bed. I had to get up at 5 in the morning. I said, I'm going to get some sleep. She came to bed in the middle of the night. She said, Randy, it's not good. I said, oh, what are you talking about? I said, oh, they flipped the totals. They found a bunch of votes. That was really what I needed to hear at about 2 o'clock in the morning, 1 o'clock, whatever time it was. But 2020 was a test ground for seeing if we would accept lockdowns. And on that note, World Health Organization right now is trying to take over the sovereignty of the health issues for future pandemics, regardless of what nation you're in. And the U.S. has pretty much said, okay, we agree with it. Biden has went along with it. Of course, Biden has the administration has went along with it. Absolutely. They wouldn't do anything differently. So all this happened, nobody did anything. Yeah, the conservatives are up in arms, but what can we do? Unless we take up arms and fight, what are we going to do? We've talked to our representatives. They don't do anything. They're worthless, feckless, ineffective. greedy, blind, deaf, dumb, and blind, by the way. You know, I used to be so involved in politics. I was a true believer in politics for many, many years, from the 80s on up. Got very much involved in 2016, even starting an organization of my own. We did some good things. We flipped some school boards, flipped some whatever, along with other people. I mean, we were grassroots on the ground, boots on the ground, fighting for conservative, morally conservative values. But it does no good. Nothing ever changes. Doesn't mean I don't think we should vote, doesn't mean we shouldn't get involved. We still got to fight regardless. But 2020 was that proving ground to prove that, number one, they could make us stay home. They could shut our churches down. They could tell us we were going to die if we didn't wear a face diaper. And then also the 2020 election was absolutely stolen before our eyes. 2022 in Arizona was stolen right before our eyes. Look, folks, this is, and with the open borders, we may never have another free and fair election. Now, I think we need to go back to paper ballots. We need to go back to in-person voting on the day of election only. No mail-in ballots whatsoever. You might make a little small caveat for those in maybe nursing homes, hospitals, or those who are truly invalids that can't get out. But they have to be closely screened so people do not vote unless they have a legal right to vote, without voter ID, without a picture ID, without any of this. In-person election day. It can be done. It's not going to happen. The crazed hippies are not going to let it happen. I was happy to see that the Heritage Foundation president came out and said that the WEF is a part of the problem. Well, they are a big part of the problem. The crazed hippies used to say, and there was a movie out in the, I think it was the early 70s, mid-70s, who said that we don't trust, it was young people that were going to take over the world, you know. They were going to do things and have a utopia, which is what the devil always wants us to think. We can take over and have a utopia outside of God's kingdom. So we don't trust anyone over the age of 30. Well, I think now the mantra that we're hearing in this country is we don't vote for anyone under the age of 70, because we got a lot of old guys and old women that refuse to relinquish power and are continually getting reelected and continually leading this country not only into Marxism but into totalitarianism. Folks, we are one generation removed from having the elderly put to sleep, having a government where babies born with defects are going to be killed at birth or aborted. We are one generation away from being an absolute chaos and holocaust around the world. Now, prophetically, I say it won't happen because the rapture of the church will happen in the start of the tribulation period, which will feed right along with exactly what many of these World Economic Forum, World Health Organization people that want to track us, that want to make us take vaccines, that want to make us, oh, by the way, thank you for reminding me. They have a new variant that could come out. It's called X. Nobody knows what it is, but I just read a little snippet that said that the coronavirus, they have mutated it and found a new cousin for it. It's, what's it going to call it? I don't know. It may fall into line with this X that they're talking about. It's going to be a continuation of the war against liberals and conservatives, because it is supposedly a virus that, if you are infected with it, get this, attacks the brain and apparently eats the brain from the inside of your skull, and it shuts your body down. They have proven in lab tests that 100% of the rats that have been injected with this die within just a few days, or I think just a few days, but in a very short period of time. So the good part about that for the liberals is they're going to still be alive. The conservatives will all die, because you know that liberals don't have a brain. That's a joke. You can laugh. Some of you will. Yeah, dad joke. Great grandpa joke. But I thought it was humorous, so for myself. Okay, let's deal with Israel and the Middle East for a minute. I want to take about 5 more minutes for this quick update. Folks, we may never have another fair election. That's what I'm trying to get at. There are going to be ways this election in 2024 either will be stolen or it will be up in arms. I don't trust any of it now, and I will never trust another election, I don't think, unless we can change the way we vote. Okay, let's go to Israel. I just want to read some headlines for the next 4 or 5 minutes, and you take your own thoughts on it. I may make a sentence or two commentary, but let's get into it. Israel. I read a report just today that Qatar could be largely responsible. Now, that's a new name, being responsible. Largely responsible for the October the 7th massacre, the killing of innocents by the Gaza Strip, Hamas, and now Hezbollah firing rockets, and all the other stuff that's going on with Pakistan, Iran, Syria. Russia's flying on the Syrian border in helicopters. Houthis are firing at our United States bases. Maritime problems going on in the Red Sea, Mediterranean. Just all hell is breaking loose in the Middle East. Not surprisingly, the UN says that we must create a Palestinian state, a 2-state solution, which I am 1,000,000% against. It just prolongs and increases the odds of more chaos and war in the future. Just does. Notice none of the Arab states want the Palestinians. Egypt wouldn't even let let Hamas into Egypt. They shut their border down. They didn't want them there because they know what kind of people they are. The European Union has threatened, quote, consequences for Israel's opposition to a 2-state or a Palestinian state. The U.S., Egypt, and Qatar are pushing very hard for this 2-state solution. Now let's get to Biden and Bibi Netanyahu just for a minute. Biden continues to say that Bibi is for this. Biden continues to say that's the only way forward for a peace and for the hostage release. See, they think if they tie the hostage release to a peace plan, then they can get Israel to agree to it. But Israelis are saying no. The generals are saying no. Bibi is saying no. We're going to fight this thing until we feel like we have won. We're not going to let this simmer and just continue to fester and be the same old rockets back and forth. They are ready for a prolonged war. I remember after this happened, about a week after it happened, I did a podcast. I don't remember which one it was, on Israel. And I said, I feel like this is different. It just feels different. Usually you have these rocket barrages a day or 2 or 3 going on, maybe a week, and it simmers a little bit and they back up, whatever. This just felt different. And this is different. When it's going to end, I have no clue. I'm not a prophet, can't tell you that. But Biden continues to say Bibi supports this. Bibi continues to say, no, I do not support it. Biden even went so far later, I think it was early this week or late last week, to say that Prime Minister Netanyahu was open to some form of a 2-state solution. And Bibi came out right afterwards and said, no, I am not. We're going to fight. He even vows no Palestinian state with the Palestinian Authority or Hamas in control of that. If the Gazan people, who reportedly, and it is verified, have been housing some of the people taken hostage in their own homes with children present, if the school systems there in Gaza and in other Islamic countries are preaching death from little first graders on, death, death, death to Israel, calling them pigs and dogs and everything else, and if they had the mantra of the Saturday people first, the Sunday people second, which means they come for the Jews, and when they get the Jews, they're going to come for Christians, then how in the world are you going to even put anyone from that area in charge? Whether it's a Palestinian Authority, whether it's Hamas, whether it's Hezbollah operating somewhere, it's not going to happen. These people need to be defeated, 100% defeated. The U.S. says, quote, no way to ensure Israeli long-term safety without a two-state solution. Folks, this is getting serious, because if U.S. pulls back its support of Israel, Israel cannot fight an indefinite war. And if they make them accept this and we bring some kind of pseudo peace around, things are not going to get better. In fact, they're going to stay the same they are, except they'll continue to get worse. I bring you back to something, and I'll close with this, that Iran said, one of the top generals in Iran said last summer. He said, next year at this time, Israel will be wiped off the face of the map. No longer exists. Now that was late spring, early summer, and it got a lot of play in the summer. Well, Israel's still here, and it will be still here next year. I believe that was a forecast that they knew they were going in October, and he was trying to make it sound like a lot of our prophets in the Christian religion make it sound. They tell you something that common sense says is going to happen, and then they take credit for it. And so, not going to happen. Israel's still going to be there. Well, listen, I hope you've enjoyed this. I just wanted to share with you a little prophetic journalism. Israel's going to stay. There's going to be war. There's going to be fighting. It's going to happen all the time until the Prince of Peace shows up. And that's going to take a long and winding road to get there. But I hope you've enjoyed my prophetic journalism for the day. World Economic Forum, Israel, lots of great headlines. Continue to pray for the peace of Israel, Jerusalem. Continue to pray for safety. Continue to pray for the release of the hostages. Look, Israel is the only true friend we have in the world, if you want to think about it, because England used to be a very valued and close ally. But with the influx the last 15 years, 10 years especially, of Islamists coming over from Syria and from Iran and from other places, Iraq, Europe has become Islamic dominant in many ways. People are getting elected to parliaments, to prime ministerships, to police chiefs, and we're seeing a hatred for Christianity begin to move through Europe like we haven't seen in America yet. But just as the saying is about California, what you see in California usually ends up sweeping the country. What you see happening in Europe, because we have so many of these left-wing, Luciferian, lug-nut, single-digit IT politicians that think we should be Europe. Why don't they move there if they like Europe so much? I'm so sick of John Kerry. I'm so sick of these Obamaism people that are of that tree of Obama wanting us to be what we're not. I'm sick of the border being open. By the way, I can't quit yet. I'm fired up. Texas, you build a wall. Texas, you put razor wire up everywhere along that border. You stop the invasion. It is your country. Texas, you never should have joined the United States. I'm telling you, you would have been a great independent state to have lived in. I'd be living there now if they were an independent state. Because guarantee you they wouldn't let these people in. Taken to the Supreme Court, the Supreme Court says, nope, can't do it, can't override the federal government, even though we have a 10th Amendment and we have a states' right guarantee in our Constitution. The problem with that is, and I'll close with this, I promise. Liberal, elitist, Harvard, Yale, Ivy League, Georgetown, educated nitwits who are fed a one-worldism and fed all of this can say they're conservative all they want, but they are not. Just like every Republican says he's conservative when he wants to be elected. 85% of them have no clue what that means. That's why we have a uniparty. So if you really want conservative Supreme Court justices, get out of that intelligentsia corridor up there and get out in middle America, in Missouri, in Louisiana, in Alabama, somewhere, and find you some good judges that truly are conservative. That's what you need to do if you want conservatives on the Supreme Court. Thank you for listening. Little rant, little rave. Hope you enjoy it. Please share this. I'm on Spotify, also on YouTube. You can go to my channel, which is Moral Conservative, but if you need to, you can search my name, Randy Harris, the numbers 100. It will pull me up, a beautiful picture of a bald-headed elderly gentleman who is just filled with intelligence and excitement and humor. That's me. You can see my picture, click on it. I have a channel, Moral Conservative, there. We are living in prophetic times. And just to remind you of this, you were born for such a time as this.